Hello everyone, welcome to Glasgow Loves EU's lockdown live stream. Tonight we're talking about a really important topic, which is the EU settlement scheme. We've got a slight change from our usual format for those who watch regularly, and we've got three guests. They're Noelia Martinez and Dr. Gabi Ingle from the Citizens' Rights Project in Edinburgh, and Dr. Donald Macaskill of Scottish Care. My name's Fiona Wishlade, and also with us on the chat are Jenny Breslin and Bernd Poor. Jenny's going to be monitoring social media for questions that come in on Facebook or on Twitter. So if you have some, please do post them there, and we'll try and get them in the course of the conversation. And Bernd is making sure that all the technology works for us and recording the session so people can view it later on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. So many people, as many people watching will know, EU and EEA citizens have until the end of June, so just 4 weeks now, to apply for settled or pre-settled status in order to be able to remain in the UK following Brexit. There's been a lot of campaigning to have the deadline extended, but so far that hasn't been successful. Tonight, we're not going to go into the details of the scheme as such, but we really want to showcase the work that's being done to make sure that people have got access to the information and advice that they need, and also to highlight particular areas of concern, particularly people who aren't being reached at present. And above all, we want to encourage everyone to make sure that all of their friends, family, neighbours and colleagues who need to apply under the scheme know about the scheme and the support that they can get in order to apply. So I'd like to begin maybe by chatting with Noelia. Can you maybe just in simple terms start by outlining for us who needs to apply for settled or pre-settled status?
Thank you, Fiona. And first of all, thank you so much always for your support to our project and helping us to raise awareness about the scheme. Yes, so all EU citizens, and when I say EU citizens, we're also talking of citizens that are from the European Economic Area and Switzerland, who arrived to the UK or who started residing in the UK before the end of the transition period, and that's the 31st of December 2020, must apply to the EU settlement scheme if they want to continue residing legally in the UK after the deadline. And the deadline is in 1 month's time, on the 30th of June 2021. And it's important to say that that includes children. So children also needs to apply. It includes students. So for students who might not necessarily think that they want to make the UK, or in this case Scotland, their home, if they are going to be in the UK after the 30th of June, even if it's for 1 month, they also need to apply. Elderly people, it doesn't matter how long you've been in the UK, you need to apply. Unless you have indefinite leave to remain or to enter, in which case is optional. EU citizens married to British citizens also need to apply, and those with a permanent resident card, and also family members of EU citizens, and this include non-EU citizens. So if their stay in the UK depends on their relationship with an EU citizen, that person also needs to apply to the EU settlement scheme.
Okay, so that's quite a wide scope of the population. And in terms of scale, I mean, what do we know about the number of people in Scotland who've applied and got settled or pre-settled status, and do you have any idea about the number who still need to apply?
So the Home Office released their latest quarterly statistics last week, I think it was, and this covers until March 31st of March 2021, and until that moment they received 2,600 and 220 applications from Scotland. Of those, 250,040 were concluded applications. So that means that there is more than 13,000 that still need to be. They need to come out with an outcome for those. And then of those that has been concluded, 56% were granted settled status, 41% pre-settled status, and 3% were granted other outcomes, and that means they were either invalid, void, or withdrawn or refused. And the ones that we're more worried about, and that we've seen a trend in the latest quarterly statistics, is that the refuse applications are growing. In the past statistics, there were those without an outcome and that were not concluded were double, but now we are seeing that they're getting there in looking at all the applications. And in terms of how many people is left to apply, we have no idea. There is no. This is one of the problematic areas of this scheme. There is no official numbers. There is just estimation of the amount of people that needs to apply to the scheme. We were talking about 3 million people when this all started. We know now nearly have 5 million of applications. That doesn't translate to applicants, but nearly 5 million. And there is no way to know how many are left. What we can say for our experience when promoting the scheme, it is certainly that when we promote the scheme and when we speak to different groups of people or go to places to provide support, we still get people that have no idea that they needed to apply, or we have people that they didn't have idea that their children have to apply. So everything that we're doing indicates that when the deadline reaches, when we reach the 30th of June, not everyone would have submitted their application. We know that there is going to be late applications. Everything indicates that.
Yeah, and I mean, you talked about the kind of outreach things that you've been doing, and that you encounter people who haven't applied. Are there particular groups that appear, amongst those who haven't yet applied?
Yes, there is. I mean, the Home Office, when this all started, when they put out the scheme, they say that about 10 to 20% of the people that need to apply to the EU settlement scheme has some kind of vulnerability or will encounter some kind of barrier when applying. So that's a big percentage, and that's a lot of people. And there is many barriers, but or many vulnerable groups. So we're quite worried, for example, about children. As I say, we are getting a lot of queries from parents that just realize that they need to submit an application for children, and this might happen for different reasons. Some of them think that because they apply, their children are automatically covered by their application or by the status that they got, and others believe because their children were born in the UK that they're automatically British.
That they don't need to.
So when this is not always the case.
Yeah.
Not everyone who is born in the UK are automatically British, and this is why we advise for those parents that might think that their child is British because it was born here to contact us, and then we can tell them if this is the case or not. In any case, if the child might be automatically British but might not have a UK passport yet, it might be better to still apply to the EU settlement scheme. And what we are encountering with children, the major problem is that many of them do not have an ID yet. They don't have a passport or a national ID. And the problem is that it is only 1 month left. It takes quite a while to get a passport. And there are some consulates that can provide a temporary passport that take less time to issue, but still some people encounter economic problems when having to pay for a passport because of the pandemic. consulates do not have more appointments. So children are one of the groups that we're more concerned about. And then we have to talk as well about children in care in this case. I mean, Gabi maybe can also talk about this with me, because she's been quite involved in this campaign. But when we learned about children in care through a report that was issued by the Children's Society, we started to do our own research about, if anything was done in the local authorities in Scotland. To our surprise, the numbers of children in care that we were identifying did not match at all the report of the Children's Society. Many local authorities were telling us that there was none in their local authority, or maybe one. But we have been trying to continue raising awareness among the local authorities. And it is now when we are receiving lots of reports of children that need support to apply. And these are, let's not forget that children in care might have, and usually have, more complex cases that take longer to solve. So it might take more than a month to actually put all the paperwork together, and the deadline is there. I don't know if Gabi wants to say anything else about children in care. She's receiving a lot of calls on this.
Gabi,
yes,
do you want to say something about that now?
Yes, so we are quite upset about the situation, because that should have been solved quite a while ago. When we were approaching the local authorities, it was exactly a year ago when we were trying to raise the campaign amongst the social workers, but it was really not well received. Well, now we are getting pretty much every day I receive phone calls from social workers, senior officials within local authorities, asking us for help. So obviously there is a problem rising. The only silver lining to the entire problem is that the Home Office issued an update recently that children's application can be late. And not only looked after children, but also normal children within families. So the Home Office will accept late applications from children, which is obviously a very welcome update, but we don't know how late the applications can be. So we don't know whether it can be a month, maybe at the end of summer, at the end of the year, or maybe the next few years. So there's nothing certain, but there is hope.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to add that the guidelines by the Home Office on late applications were welcome, and are really welcome, but we don't know how they're going to apply them. And also there is not legal provisions in place for those who apply late. So this is why we're encouraging people not to rely on the ability to apply, to being able to apply late, because we really don't know how the Home Office will apply this in the future. And also you're not legally protected until you apply. There is no legal provisions in place. And just quickly to say, other groups you are concerned about: elderly, those in care, and really anyone in care, people with mental health issues, people with a language barrier, those in remote areas as well. There are many groups that we are concerned about. Roma communities as well in Scotland. There is plenty of vulnerable groups, those that are digitally excluded, because this is a scheme, let's not forget, that everything is done digitally. And we encounter a lot of people that need support, even those that you might think that are quite used to using a smartphone or the internet, many times get lost in the applications. They realize suddenly it's like, I've been trying, but it doesn't work. And then when you investigate a bit more, there is an application there, but sometimes the application doesn't read the chip. And you have completed the first part and they don't realize that they need to go to the second part. So many of the people that we support struggle with the app as well.
Sure. Okay, that's great. Thanks a lot for that, Noelia. I'm just going to mention something that I know that you did some work on, which is the Europe Street, and I think we'll put a link to that to the piece on that on Facebook, so that people can have a look at that. That's highlighting the need for parents and guardians of children of EU nationals to apply. I don't know if is there anything from social media, Jenny, before we move on?
Yeah, there's a question here from Richard. It says, why do people in the UK have until the end of June, whereas British people in the EU have until the end of the year?
It's a good question. I mean, this is something that the Home Office decided. They give actually they give a grace period. We are now in the grace period. So the transition period ended at the end of last year, and then they give another 6 months of grace, as they call it, for people to be able to apply. There has been a lot of campaigning to get the deadline extended, especially because of the pandemic. It's been really, really hard having to, reach out people online. It's very difficult to reach, especially the most vulnerable. And let's not forget that sometimes, for example, when we're trying to reach out local authorities or to raise awareness about the scheme with local authorities, they have been already very busy with the pandemic and, having to provide support. So it has made it even more difficult. So the deadline is something that the Home Office put, and it was agreed. That's
Yeah,
the
I mean, I
reason
think
why.
also each country can make its own decisions about their scheme. So it's different in France and Germany and so on. It's not a strictly reciprocal arrangement. Okay, maybe we can sort of like move on. You've mentioned already, Noelia, that amongst the vulnerable groups are the elderly and people in residential care. And so I'd like to move on and talk to Donald Macaskill. You're CEO of Scottish Care, which describes itself as the voice of the independent care sector. Now, obviously, the sector has had an enormously challenging 15 months or so with the pandemic, but I wondered to what extent of the implications of the EU settlement scheme featured on your agenda and that of your members.
Thanks, Fiona. Very significantly, both before the pandemic and during the pandemic. So we've been very aware of two things, two groups who are particularly impacted by the date and the scheme. One is clearly staff, and I'll maybe go on to talk about them in a moment's time. But the other are residents of care homes, but our members also support individuals to remain independent in the community. And those individuals have a degree of vulnerability because of their age, or maybe a disability, or maybe they're living with dementia or other neurological conditions. So we've, in Scotland, about 80,000 of those individuals, and we've got about just under 40,000 people living in our residential and nursing care homes. Now, it would have been challenging at any time to enable those individuals to be properly reached by a scheme which is so digitally dependent, because we ignored the reality of digital poverty and exclusion, and the pandemic has highlighted that really significantly. And we understand now some of the myths, the myth that all young people under the age of 30 have a smartphone. Well, we know that not to be the case. At least a quarter have no access to that sort of technology. So in ordinary times, this would have been challenging. But because of the pandemic, it has become virtually impossible. So people like me, the Older People's Commissioners in Northern Ireland, in Wales, and the national age bodies around older people's support, wrote to the Home Secretary, and indeed we've not received even the courtesy of a response, as far as I'm aware, asking for the scheme to be extended, because all the people I'm sure on this call will appreciate that the older population have been those who have been most impacted by the pandemic. If you're living in a care home, the tragedy of the way in which the pandemic has impacted in residential and nursing care, you don't need me to talk about. But that has had a consequence of shutting people away. We are only now slowly beginning to get back to designated visiting and people having access and people being able to leave the care home to go into the community now that they are vaccinated. So how we're supposed to communicate, to encourage, to work with people around information I do not know. And that's been a real challenge. So we're very concerned that because, as Noelia highlighted, we don't know how many people are impacted. And so many individuals in a care home, at least 12 to 20%, have no family contact whatsoever. So it is up to staff to help them, to work with them, to begin to realize some of the challenges. And a huge percentage, maybe 80% of those in care are living with a neurological condition like dementia. So they will literally have forgotten probably elements of their early identity. And then you've got the community where we have seen really distressing isolation and loneliness, and that community as well, we're very concerned with, because staff who might have had time to ask a question, to raise awareness, and we've been encouraging them to do that, really have no time. It takes 7 minutes to put on and put off your PPE when you're going into somebody's house. And if you're on a 15-minute visit, because that's what the local authority will pay for, that leaves very little room to have a conversation. So we are, in summary, very concerned.
Yeah. So, I mean, in practical terms, what kind of support have people who are using the services provided by your members being able to access? I mean, it sounds like it's been, I mean, I don't want to say hit and miss, but it sounds like it's been, you know, very constrained in terms of what can be provided in terms of support.
So the local authority body, COSLA, and working with Citizens Advice Scotland and the Scottish Government have been putting information out, increasing awareness. Our own organisation have been holding webinars to encourage staff and managers to ask questions of those in care homes, to not just take for granted that they know the story of everybody, but to consider maybe this is an issue which is of concern to them. We've been doing that with home care organisations. But in truth, you know, in the middle of a pandemic, when your primary concern is to keep people alive, this should not be your job. It should, forming that relationship, nurturing, reassuring people should be the primary focus of any time that you have, not raising anxiety and concern. And I think, if I'm being honest, a lot of care staff have been reticent about raising the issue of settled status because they don't want people to get more anxious or upset, especially with dementia, than they are. But now that time is very, very short, there is a greater focus. But it's not where it needs to be, Fiona, and that would be absolutely true.
And I mean, again, question of scale. I mean, is it information that's routinely collected and collated about residents or people who are being cared for?
No, because quite rightly, your heritage, your status, your citizenship is private to you. We don't routinely calculate and gather data, about somebody's status in terms of their residency or nationality. That's not been what has happened, nor has it been what has been happening with staff. So that's the second area of real concern, because we have, between the statisticians tell us 68% of social care staff in Scotland come from the European Economic Area and wider. We'd estimate it's possibly slightly a little bit more because people have not self-disclosed. But what's really worrying is that there are some care homes, for instance, in the north of Scotland, where that figure can go up to 30%, 25 to 30%. So the loss of even one or two people in a community, especially rural, which is so interlinked and interdependent, becomes really concerning and destabilizes the ability of that nursing home, for instance, to continue. So we're very concerned that staff who have been exhausted beyond imagination have not been thinking about the deadline, because they've been thinking about keeping the people they love and care for at the forefront of their attention. And we know that that's the reality. I've just chaired our annual awards, which this year were exceptionally difficult to do. but I have amazed that a significant number of those nominated and who have won are individuals who have a European heritage. Now, I don't know if they've applied and been successful, because we don't know. And so the next few weeks are of critical importance to encourage every care worker, or if you're a friend of a care worker, to think about, have they applied? Can they work with organisations like Citizens' Rights if they've got any questions, and to make an application as quickly as possible, because we cannot, as communities of care and compassion, lose those dedicated professionals.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that we can all do, and everybody watching can, you know, take the time to ask around and think about the people that they know, and just try and check that they've got access to the information that they that they need. Jenny, do you have anything from social media that you want to chip in, and I don't know if Noelia and Gabi have anything that they want to ask Donald about at the same time.
There aren't any more questions on social media just yet.
Okay, Gabi, Noelia, is there anything that you want to ask Donald about, or we move on? Sorry, go ahead.
Maybe not to us, but just to say to Donald that by all means, if we can provide any kind of support to their carers, to the people they support as well, we are absolutely here to help out with applications or with any queries that they may have. Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you, Noelia. Just Fiona, just one last thing. You know,
course,
there are other groups who we're obviously very concerned about as well, because, you know, older people are not a homogeneous group of individuals. And whilst we know those who receive services and who get support through care organisations like the ones we represent, but many of our members also work with people who are homeless, who are also older, who have long since lost any records about their own identity, who certainly do not have a smartphone capable of taking the photographs that are necessary for an application, and others whose lifestyles are chaotic for whatever reason. So those are other groups and individuals who we're particularly worried about, especially if they are old, because they have additional barriers and burdens because of dementia and other conditions.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fiona.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that's, you know, a number of really serious issues that give us all pause for thought. Gabi, maybe I can turn to you to ask you something, you know, more about the Citizens' Rights Project and the work that you do with that. Can you maybe outline briefly what it is that the project does, and how does it work for people who need to access your services?
Thank you, Fiona. Yes, so Citizen Rights Project, they're like the core team. There are three of us, so Noelia, Pavel, and myself. Noelia has been responsible for what we call briefing events. So Noelia used to organize events when we targeted local authorities, social workers, people working for charities. That was the way we were trying to contact organizations working with vulnerable people. Then Pavel used to organize information sessions. So events when we targeted members of the public and informed them about the EU settlement scheme and that they have to apply. And then I am responsible for volunteers. So we have over 40 volunteers across Scotland, trained in immigration law related to EU settlement scheme, and then accredited by the Office of the Immigration Services Commissioner. So they are accredited immigration advisors limited to EU settlement scheme. Of course, during the pandemic, everything changed. Everything went to chaos. So we all combined the three branches into one service, and we started supporting as many people as we can. So we moved the information sessions online. We ask our volunteers who speak various European languages to deliver the information sessions online, like via Facebook, for example, to different communities across the UK. But we also prepared loads of webinars and information sessions for local authorities, charity workers, social workers, and all the organizations that work with vulnerable people. And through that, we have been receiving clients who we were trying to support them online, but obviously, as we are talking about vulnerable people, in many cases, the people just struggled with the applications, with internet, with computer, with everything. So luckily we managed to get the permission from the Scottish government that actually our services are essential. And pretty much since last autumn, we have been supporting clients. Like we can organize face-to-face appointments with those who really need us. And then since the beginning of May, we actually tour around Scotland. We've been in many locations organizing what we call EU Settlement Scheme clinics, where we can take appointments and the clients can come ask us a question. We can help with the application. We can check their applications. It seems to be the biggest problem at the moment is that the people applied at some point in the past, but they either haven't heard from the Home Office, they've never received the status, they don't know how to log on their application, they don't know how to log on their status. So there's a lot of misunderstanding and there's a lot of confusion, even amongst those people who have already applied. So as I said, we've been touring across Scotland. We still have 6 events planned for early June, so first half of June, and then the second half of June, we will be providing face-to-face support, mainly in Edinburgh, from, 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock in the evening. So anyone who really needs to see us will be able to come to our office and speak to us and speak to an advisor.
Okay, that's great, and we'll put some. We'll put a link to your various events on the Facebook page so that people can see the list and the dates and so on. Now I know you talked before about people who are in particular situations, maybe people who've got convictions or who've got incomplete records and that kind of thing. Are these the main kind of like groups of people who you think have not applied, and are they basically kind of like hoping that the whole thing's going to go away and are worried that they might be rejected, or how can you reach people who are maybe sort of like concerned about their applications?
Yes, we do work with many clients who are concerned because they had some criminal incidents in the past, or convictions, or they spent some time in jail. There are ways of helping those people. We have a partner with Citizen Advice Scotland, and we have access to their solicitors, so they are higher level immigration solicitors. And of course, if we come across anyone with criminal past, we can refer those clients to the higher level solicitors. These services are also free of charge. And the solicitors can then provide professional advice. They can support clients with their application. So even if someone doesn't have a valid ID, even if someone is doesn't want to go to their national consulate, which we have those clients because they committed some kind of crime in their home country, so they are wanted in their home countries, but they can leave. They have lived in the UK, they have worked here, they establish new life, but they just they just don't want to go back to their home country for any reason. We have ways of supporting those clients as well. So if anyone is in this kind of situation, is still concerned, there's still something that they might be concerned about their past, they don't know how to solve these problems, please do get in touch. If we cannot help you, we can refer you to higher level solicitors who will be able to help you, or will be able to at least clarify your situation, whether it is possible or not. There are people who hope that they can get away with this, so they don't have to register, everything is going to be fine. What is going to happen to those people after the 1st of July, we simply don't know. We don't know how long they will be able to legally stay in the UK. The Home Office is not clear about that. But we know that from the 1st of July, they're not going to have any rights in the UK. So they're not going to have rights to work, to education, to National Health Service. They're just going to be here as tourists, pretty much. This is how they're going to be treated. And then we just don't know how long they will be able to stay. So if there are any members in the public who have some kind of concerns, please do get in touch and we will try to help.
Okay, so I think there's a really clear message there, is that however complicated you might think that your situation is, don't stick your head in the sand and hope it'll resolve itself. Get some get some advice, because it may be actually much simpler than you than you think. Okay, I mean, the other thing I wanted to ask you about is, obviously we've talked already about elderly people and people with perhaps neurological conditions. You've said also you can support people in different languages, and what about people who's like maybe visually impaired or hard of hearing? Is that something that you can support as well in terms of providing advice?
We have supported people with hard of hearing or people with visual impairments in the past. It's very difficult because there are very little available materials for example, people with visual impairments. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, Noelia, that was her very early project, since 2018, I think she has been trying to establish some kind of communication with the Home Office that this kind of materials are essential because there's a big group of people who still need to apply. So there's not that many materials available, but we are trying as much as we can. We have organized several webinars together with the Royal Association for Deaf People. As much as I'm sorry, I don't remember the name, but yes, we have organized several webinars with them, and we work closely with one of their advisors, who is also fully trained immigration advisor limited to EU settlement scheme. So we are trying to reach out to this community as well as much as we can.
Okay. Great. I don't know. Does anybody else, Donald or Noelia, do you want to add anything further before we wrap up? I think we've got one question from social media, so perhaps we could take that while the three of you think about whether there's anything that you want to say at the end of the session. Jenny, there's a question come in, I think.
Yeah, there's a question from Victoria. Are there any posters we could put up, e.g. in GP surgeries or care homes? I guess they're asking us, is there any kind of like advertising materials maybe that people could download from your website to help kind of spread the word to people who aren't online?
Yes, I can share later on our Padlet and also our email address, so people can definitely get in touch with us if they want posters, leaflets. We have a lot of materials that we have created. Specifically, we have one poster in, I think it's 18 EU languages, with a very clear message about who needs to apply and by when. So I will put our Padlets, say our info ad, and they can write to us and we can send some materials to their address as well.
Okay, that's great.
Just very quickly, Fiona, that I would encourage people to access the Scottish Government's Stay in Scotland. Care homes have been encouraged to download posters from there and put them up. But again, it's getting to the right people that matters, because not everybody, the issue of visual impairment is significant. 80% of those over 80, 90% over 90 in Scotland have some form of visual impairment. So being able to read the poster is a challenge in itself.
Yeah. So we can maybe put a link to that website on the Facebook page as well. Okay, Noelia, Gabi, Donald, do you want to say anything just to wrap up the call? Anything you'd like to finally add?
Well, I could just add that to everyone, I guess we have the responsibility or not the responsibility, but if we can ask our neighbors, our colleagues, our family members, if they have applied. If you know anyone, just ask. There is materials out there. We are here to help. We have our service is free of charge. We are being funded by the Scottish government to provide support. Also, a bit about from the Home Office, we collaborate with Phoenix to provide support in the borders with funding from the Home Office. So just get in touch with us. You can get in touch in info@citizensrightsproject.org. You can do it in any EU language. We have volunteers that support us in different languages. And just to say that we're going to be on Saturday in Perth and Oban. That's on the 5th. On the 9th, we're going to be in Eyemouth with Phoenix. And on the 12th, am I saying this correct?
You're in Glasgow on the 12th, no?
You're in Glasgow on the 12th.
Yeah.
And I think, am I not saying it correct, Gabi? Is it the 5th? We are in Oban and Perth, I believe.
No, we are in Perth and
Elgin.
Elgin. Yes.
That's it. Perth and Elgin on the 5th. And when are we going to be in Oban? Because you're going to be in 12 as well.
Oban is on the 12th and Glasgow on the 12th. And then there'll be one more event in Dundee, probably 14th or 15th of June.
And then from the 14th until the 27th, there will be open doors in Edinburgh. We will do long hours for people to come along and we provide support face to face with their applications. If the links, I think, are going to be on the comments, so they can book their appointments. People can book their appointments there through Eventbrite.
Okay, great. Donald, Gabi, do you want to have a last word?
Just to say that, you know, obviously I spend a lot of my time working with staff and others who have been amazing during the pandemic in their care. And somebody recently asked me that they weren't sure if they wanted to make an application. And all I could say is that you have got to try to shut out some of the negativity and the toxicity which comes from parts of social media and parts of our communities, because for those working in social care, we need you, we want you to stay, and we are made better by you. So please apply.
Thanks, Donald. Gabi, yours is the last word.
Well, to what Donald just said, I really would like to encourage people to apply, because if they don't, they are not going to have the second chance with this EU settlement scheme. The new immigration system implemented in January is way more complicated. Not only complicated, it's expensive. We're talking about visas. So even if you're not sure at this moment, it's better to apply, because you're giving yourself a chance. You can always change your mind. You can always leave the UK. You don't have to come back, but you have an option to come back and actually have full rights in the UK without the overwhelming amount of documents, expenses, and God knows what else to prove to be able to come back here and work again or live here in the UK. So I really would like to encourage people, because this is something that is a chance for people to stay and with a very little effort comparing to what is coming.
Yep. I think that's crucial, and I think anybody who's seen what a non-EU citizen has to go through to come into the UK, will know that that's a huge amount of work, and that is what's facing EU citizens in future. Before we wrap up, just one last thing to say, because our viewers aren't just in Scotland, and it's just to say that there is similar support available in all other parts of the UK under the settled scheme, and other resources which are promoted online as well. So just finally, I'd just like to thank everybody for participating in this. Hopefully we can get the message out loud and clear, and try and do our utmost to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks. So thank you very much for joining this evening, everybody.